Greetings, welcome back to CS295. This is week 6, Introduction to Databases. So we've already hopefully downloaded, set up the database, at least the program for it, SQLITE. Now what we're going to do in these few things, I'm going to put them all into one because, again, it's not super easy to see that everything's working if you just do one of these at a time. So I'm going to show you how to create a table, how to insert data in table, how to select table. Now we are using SQLITE, so these commands are for SQLITE, but they're very similar on most of the other languages, MySQL and stuff like that. So first things first, again, you need to find where you have your SQLITE software. So again, I have mine under Documents. See, that was the one I created when I downloaded everything. And then I'll go ahead. So do note I have testDB. I'm just going to go ahead and use that, but I'll remind you of the commands that will create the other one. So first things first, we need to open it. Again, it starts that off with you, right? So .open and then test.db. Now if you spell anything wrong like I just did there and click enter, it's going to create that file, right? So it's going to create whatever you have if it's not there. So test.db is there, so it's going to open that one. If I spell it like I did test.sql on accident and clicked enter, then it's not going to do that. All right, so click enter, but now I'm inside that database. So one thing to check, right, is to see what tables it does have. So it shouldn't have any. Now some of the other programs, like as soon as you create a database, come with other tables, but this doesn't have any tables in it yet, right? So again, we are in test.db, there's no tables. So now one of the things that you're gonna want to do normally, and this is what I like to do, is write out all of your information in other things. So if you Notepad++ or whatever your favorite text editing program is. Atom, I guess, is not a thing anymore. I guess you use Visual Studios. But again, you just want a blank file, and then you can use this to create all of the stuff. So if we look back at this, we have our syntax, create table. You also will probably notice as we're going through this that the caps are actual commands, and then everything else is what you're calling it. So as we go through this real quick, right, let's go ahead and create table, right? That is the command. If I spell it right. And then let's just call this test. Parenthesis, enter, parenthesis close, semicolon ends the statement. I'm going to do some indentation. Now, I'll have another video kind of explaining what databases are. But for now, remember that you need some way to identify each of the rows, right? Some unique method to do this. So normally most people just give that first, and each of the things we're creating are columns, all right? So what we are creating are the column headers. So we're going to create an ID. We're going to make it an integer, right, a number, and we're going to make the primary key. Now this will do a couple things for us. One, it should force it to be unique. It should auto increment, but then also it'll identify it as a primary key when we want to connect to something else. So in this case, we're just going to call this item 1. Let's go ahead and make it integer 2. Integer, and let's make it not null, so that means they have to have it. And then let's go ahead and make item 2 text. And we don't actually need that. I'm going to get rid of some of this extra spaces. All right, so this is actually the last one, so we don't put a comma after it. But you can see what I did here, right? ID, integer, that is the type. The type is an integer, and it's the primary key. This is an integer, and it's type non-null. Now, those are most of the things you want to use. There's also unique, right? So if this was like a phone number, that should be in caps. We want it unique, and probably also not, maybe possibly not null. They might not have a phone number. But again, as we go through it, these are the column headers, right? The things going up and down. And then as we're going to see in a second, we're going to add the rows to it by inserting actual items into this. But this is the basics, right? Create table is the actual command to create it. This is the name of it. You do further research, you know, some things will allow you to be, hey, if it doesn't already exist, if it already exists, don't create it, right? But in this case, we're just going to assume everything. And I know I don't have it because I just created the table or the database. And you can create multiple tables on this. I mean, kind of think of it like an Excel workbook or Google Sheets. You can have multiple pages on there, right? Each of these are own pages, and then one is connected again. So watch the video on, you know, how they work. But that's it, right? So what you do is you get that all set up, right? Again, comma, comma, no comma, because it's the last one, and then you copy it, and you go back here, and you paste it, and that ×1 means it's right. It's not done with the command until it sees that. So in theory, I'm hitting the up arrow is what I'm doing. .tables, and now we can see test is there. All right. So I just hit .tables. Nothing was there. Create tables. Check tables. So we now know that's working. So the next piece is how do we actually get these rows into there? All right. So maybe look back over here. You need to understand, again, the syntax. So insert into, name of the table, so ours would be test, and these are the name of the columns. Now you only need to add the columns that you're going to use, right? So ID is auto incrementing. So I'm not going to manually type that because it'll start at 1 and then come 2. So I don't want to override that. But also if it's not null, right? If it's labeled not null, then you have to put it here as well. Otherwise, I can just put, in my case, item 1. And then all of those are the column headers, values, and then what you're actually going to put that in there. So again, we're going to go back to here for another couple examples. So insert into, and this just allows me to type things wrong, and if I do something wrong, I can go back and check it, copy and paste. You'll see in a second why I don't just type this command directly into it. All right, so we're going to insert into test. We just created that, and then I don't have all these commands perfectly. Okay, yeah, so we are going to do item 1 and then item 2. Right, so this is a number. Item 2. You can see it's already kind of memorizing these. If we do this, I'm going to file, save as, and then documents. And I'm going to put this in this just so we can find it easier. I normally do this. I recommend as well. I'm going to call this, it's SQL, so give me a second. There we go. .SQL. So let's call it. Are you kidding me? And apparently I didn't click off of it. Okay. So we'll go up here. Sure, let's call it new. All right. So new SQL. We'll save it. You should also notice as soon as I did that, it starts giving you some of the color coding for yourself. So insert in test, values, parenthesis, and then semicolon. And then the space there. All right. So let's add 500, and strings still need their quotes around them. Now here's why I do this, because if I want to add more, I copy and I paste into it. So let's do 400 and 200 and hello world. So, right. So again, we are inserting these into them. They have the semicolons at the end. I'll copy that. I'll go back here. I right click on it. Insert into such column called test. Give me a second. Insert into contacts. New thing called test. And this is where you get to find the fun thing of why you do it wrong. So this is a good example. Insert into test. No such column called test. Well, that's nice. That's not what that's supposed to be. That's supposed to be the name of the thing. Oh, the error is there. That's fun. Oh, no, I didn't do this backwards, right? No, did I? Guys, is there any contacts? Blah, blah, blah. Again, there's another reason too. So otherwise, I'd have to use the up arrow and try to go through them. But now I can go ahead and just make the changes into here. So insert data test, item 1 and 2. Insert data test, items 1, values. So I made it unique. That is unique. Just doing some troubleshooting real quick. Item 1 and item 2. And again, this is another reason to have everything on here, so I can see all of this together. Values 500. Test. And it did make these unique, but as I said, those are already unique. I'm wondering if it's freaking out. This shouldn't be the wrong thing, but another thing you can do is if someone has errors, you can just do one at a time now. Once you're like, oh, that didn't work. Okay, that's fun. Apparently it doesn't like the double quotes, so we'll go back. Do it without the double quotes. Okay. Now we're not going to spend a whole lot on this next piece. Because, again, this is just to show it works, so that's the only reason I'm really doing this in this lesson right now with the selecting data. Again, we'll spend more time on it. But essentially, you can select everything by selecting, this just means all, from, and then the table name. Selecting just this column from table name. And then, again, we'll spend a little bit more time on this later, but we can say, hey, select from this, so let's select everything, but this is saying, all right, I don't want everything, I just want one piece, right? So we'll spend more time on that later, but for now, the key piece of this is understanding that. So let's go ahead and just select everything so we can see this. And sometimes I will just type this one in because the command's fairly simple. Select star from test, and there you go, right? Remember how I said there's ID, primary key, it automatically updates that, and then we have all of our different items in there. If we wanted to, we could go ahead and add another one of these, paste that. This doesn't have to be unique, but this does have to be unique. Go back, paste that in there, enter, and then up arrow, select. And you can see that was added along with this. Again, this is essentially the columns of the spreadsheet, right? This is A1, B1, B2, right? A2, so on and so forth. The key, though, is, and this is kind of the whole point of this, at least especially at the beginning level, is the ability to write this code and just select whatever you need. So you can write a command, essentially use code to select just different pieces, right? And that's really what the start of next week is going to look like when we go over here. And then we'll go over the rest of the pieces that we need, updating and deleting data. And again, that's the pure basics. And with that, once we get back into PHP, we can now put in usernames and passwords, right? We can have username, password, and then we can insert username, password. I know, username and password is sitting there for us. Username, password. We can add new users just like that. We don't have to put that into the PHP. It can be in this database. So we can have write code, right? The insert data, we can write it so someone who logs in can write it. So that's kind of the basic gist of what we're doing. And then just as an example real quick, if we were going to say I want just, and I don't have any that are same, but I could say, well, actually, let's do this. Where item 1 is greater than, let's say, 300. All right, so, and we'll go over more. We could say when it's equal to 200, but in this case, right, it grabbed all of them that are where it's greater than 300. So this just allows us to the where statement, and we can, there's all kinds, we could do ands and ors, and pretty much everything you can do in programming. It just allows us to access this. And if you have hundreds, thousands, possibly millions or more of these items, being able to go through it with these little statements is really what's nice. And again, this is just the basics of databases, so we can use it with PHP. And when we're done with this, you'll be able to actually make very basic web apps, right? Getting more advanced, if you actually take a database class, you're going to have more columns, and you'll have, again, if you watch the video explaining databases, you know, like, there's no point in having the users and like all of their information, and then if they add another piece, got all the user information again. Like a library system is probably a great example that I use in the system, right? This is a user, he checked out this book. This is all the user information that he checked out this book, right? If you use Excel or Google Sheets, that's kind of what you have to do, but you don't have to do that with, right? I can say, hey, this user is number 1, and I have all the book checkouts over here, all right? All these book checkouts, user 1, and all that 1 means all of the user information that's on this side. But again, a little bit over. These are the basics of creating. I think this is why I recommend creating it, and then you just save this, and you have this forever. You can look back at this and be like, oh, what did I do for this? You do your select statement. Again, I can do star. It's everything. I can just type in item 1. If I wanted 2 of them, I go item 1, comma item 2 from test, and that, and Control S. There you go, right? So we have all of this for later date, which you'll probably see this when we go another assignment, pull it back up. Just if anything, to remember what's in there, right? Sometimes that's what's really nice. You forget, what did I call it? What I have? Is it null? It's really nice to just see this code and see what everything's in there. But that's it for the basics. We'll see you next lesson.